12-year-old Jin carefully placed his last batch of protein cookies on the small metal tray. The warm smell of vanilla and nutrients filled the air around his tiny booth in the bustling marketplace. Of Station Alpha 7, his fingers moved quickly, arranging each cookie in perfect rows just like his grandmother had taught him back on Earth. The space station hummed with activity around him. Massive cargo ships docked at the metal ports with thunderous crashes that shook the entire structure. Blue-skinned Zen-3 traders walked past carrying glowing crystal containers. 3 armed Kree mechanics rolled by on hover platforms, their tools sparking as they fixed broken equipment. Jin had grown used to the strange sights and sounds of the galaxy's busiest trading hub. Fresh cookies, made with real Earth ingredients. Jin called out in his clear voice. A group of human dock workers turned toward his booth, their faces lighting up with smiles. These tough men and women worked 16-hour shifts loading and unloading ships from across the galaxy. But they always had time for Jin's homemade treats. "Hey, there, little chef," said Maya, a cargo handler with grease-stained overalls. "Got any of those chocolate chip ones today?" Jin nodded eagerly and wrapped 3 cookies in clean white paper. "My mom taught me a new recipe last night. These ones have real cocoa from the African farms." Maya handed him 5 credits, double the usual price. "Keep the change, kid. You're helping your family, right?" Jin's face glowed with pride. "Yes, ma'am. Dad's always busy with his work, and Mom takes care of my little sister. This helps with food and supplies." What the dock workers didn't know was that Jin's father, Dr. Kim, spent his days in the highest security levels of the station as Earth-led diplomat. He sat in rooms filled with holographic displays and alien ambassadors, trying to prevent a war that could destroy entire star systems. The marketplace suddenly grew quiet. Heavy metallic footsteps echoed across the floor, and conversation stopped mid-sentence. Jin looked up to see a tall figure approaching his booth. Officer Tuck wore the black and silver uniform of the Hegemony Enforcement Division. His pale, green skin looked almost sickly under the station's artificial lights, and his 4 eyes scanned everything with mechanical precision. Tuck's species, the Vorthik, had ruled this part of the galaxy for 3 centuries. They believed in order above all else. Every transaction, every movement, every breath had to follow their strict regulations. The sight of his uniform made even the bravest traders step back nervously. "You there, human child?" Tark's voice carried the harsh accent of his homeworld. "What is the nature of this operation?" Jin's heart began to race, but he tried to keep his voice steady. "I'm selling cookies, sir. They're made fresh every morning." Tark's scanning device beeped as he pointed it at Jin's booth. Red warning lights flashed across its small screen. "Unlicensed commerce detected. Category 7 violation of Hegemony Trade Code Section 42. But, sir, I'm just trying to help my family," Jin said, his voice becoming smaller. "The cookies are safe. My mom makes sure they meet all health standards." The alien officer's expression didn't change. In Hegemony culture, laws existed to maintain perfect order. Individual circumstances meant nothing. A rule was a rule, whether you were a powerful corporation or a 12-year-old boy trying to help his parents. "Unlicensed commerce is forbidden," Tuck declared, his mechanical voice echoing through the now silent marketplace. "You will cease this illegal activity immediately." He reached out with one of his long, clawed hands and roughly grabbed Jin's arm. The boy gasped in surprise and fear. His carefully arranged cookies scattered across the metal floor, the vanilla scent mixing with the harsh smell of engine fuel and recycled air. Several human dock workers stepped forward, anger flashing in their eyes. Maya clenched her fists. "Hey, leave the kid alone." But they all knew the rules. Interfering with hegemony enforcement could mean deportation or worse. They could only watch as Jin's small business was destroyed in seconds. "This operation is terminated," Turk announced, his scanner still beeping warnings. "The human child will be processed according to Regulation 47-9. Jin's eyes filled with tears as he looked at his ruined cookies. Weeks of hard work lay crushed on the cold floor. The credits he'd earned to help his family were still in his small cash box, but now they meant nothing. What Officer Turk didn't realize was that this simple rest would set in motion events that would change the entire galaxy. Dr. Kim's diplomatic mission hung by a thread, with alien species watching to see how humans would respond to injustice. The hegemony's rigid system had just made a mistake that would expose the greatest strength of humanity: their willingness to stand together when one of their own faced unfair treatment. In the distance, security cameras recorded everything. Soon, news of a 12-year-old boy's arrest for selling cookies would spread throughout the human sections of the station, reaching ears that had connections to the highest levels of Earth's government. Dr. Kim's hands trembled as he read the security report on his personal tablet. The holographic words floated in the air of his small quarters aboard Station Alpha 7. But all he could see was his son's frightened face. His wife lay sat beside him on their narrow bed. Her eyes red from crying. They arrested Jin for selling cookies, Lee whispered, her voice breaking. "Our 12-year-old son is sitting in a hegemony detention cell because he wanted to help our family." Through their small window, they could see the massive hegemony battlecruiser Ironclaw docked at the station's military port. Its dark hull stretched for miles, covered in weapon rays that could destroy entire planets. Dr. Kim had spent months negotiating with the aliens who commanded that ship, trying to prevent a war between Earth and the hegemony. "I could call Ambassador Zixtar," Dr. Kim said quietly. "Use my diplomatic status. Demand Jin's immediate release." Lee shook her head. "And then what?" "They'll say we received special treatment because of your position. Every other family on this station will know their children don't matter as much as ours." Dr. Kim looked at his wife with growing admiration. Even in her pain, she thought about others. This was why he had fallen in love with her 20 years ago back on Earth. This was the heart of what made humans different from every other species in the galaxy. "So what do we do?" he asked. Lee stood up and walked to their communication console. Her fingers moved across the holographic keyboard with determination. "We show them what humans really are." The message she composed was simple. "Tomorrow morning, every human on this station sells cookies, not as a protest, not as a political statement, but because when one of our children faces injustice, we all face injustice. Jin's fight is our fight." Within minutes, the message spread through the human quarters like wildfire. Captain Yoon, who commanded the Earth defense ship New Seoul, forwarded it to his entire crew. Dr. Bai, the station's head medical officer, sent it to every human in the hospital sector. Even the janitorial staff passed it along through their personal networks. By midnight, something extraordinary was happening throughout Station Alpha 7. In the engineering decks, Chief Park had gathered his entire team round a massive table. Steam rose from dozens of baking trays as they worked through their night, using the ship's food processors to create thousands of cookies. "My grandmother used to say that food was love you could hold," Park said as he shaped cookie dough with his oil-stained hands. "Tomorrow, we're going to show this station what human love looks like." In the medical bay, Nurse Han organized a staff with military precision. They had turned the break room into a cookie factory, using medical-grade equipment to ensure perfect quality. The smell of baking treats mixed with the antiseptic scent of the hospital, creating something warm and welcoming. "We heal people every day," Han told her team as they worked. "Tomorrow, We heal something bigger. Even in the restricted diplomatic sectors, Ambassador Cho had quietly gathered his staff. These were men and women trained in the delicate art of interstellar politics, people who normally spend their days crafting careful words and avoiding controversy. Now they stood in their formal kitchen, flour covering their expensive suits as they learned to bake. The hegemony thinks humans are weak because we care about each other. Joe said as he rolled out cookie dough, "Tomorrow, we show them that caring is our greatest strength." As dawn broke over Station Alpha 7, something unprecedented happened. Thousands of humans emerged from their quarters, each carrying homemade cookies and simple signs. They didn't march or shout. They simply walked to every corner of the massive space station and set up small stands. Engineer Park positioned himself near the main reactor core, where the station's power systems hummed with dangerous energy. Alien technicians stopped their work to stare as he calmly arranged cookies on a fold-out table. The radiation warnings and safety barriers couldn't keep him from his mission. Nurse Han set up her stand right outside the medical bay's main entrance. Wounded hegemony soldiers being treated in the hospital watched through the windows as she served fresh cookies to anyone who approached. Her uniform was spotless, her smile genuine and unwavering. Ambassador Cho caused the biggest stir when he appeared outside the Galactic Council chambers with his own cookie stand. Alien diplomats arriving for the morning session stopped in confusion. Here was Earth's most senior representative, a man who normally commanded respect and protocol, selling homemade treats like a street vendor. The hegemony security forces didn't know how to respond. Their scanners detected thousands of illegal commerce operations simultaneously. Officer Tuk, who had arrested Jin the day before, stood in the main corridor staring at his handheld device as it beeped frantically with violation alerts. "Sir," his subordinate asked nervously, "what are your orders?" Tuk looked round at the impossible scene. Every direction he turned, humans were calmly selling cookies. They weren't angry or violent. They weren't causing disruptions or blocking traffic. They were simply doing exactly what had gotten young Jin arrested. But now there were too many to stop. For the first time in his career, the rigid hegemony enforcement system had encountered something it couldn't process: an entire species willing to break the law together, not for profit or power, but for love. Officer Tark's eyes darted between his scanner and the impossible. Seen before him, the device in his clawed hands beeped constantly, its red warning lights flashing like an emergency beacon every few seconds. A new violation alert appeared on the screen. Unlicensed commerce detected, Section 7G. Unlicensed commerce detected, Section 1-B. Unlicensed commerce detected. Medical Bay Level 3. The numbers kept climbing. 300 violations. 500, 800. His scanner had never recorded so many simultaneous infractions. In hegemony space, report, Officer Tuk, came the harsh voice through his communication device. Commander Sherlock, his superior, sounded increasingly agitated. Command Central demands an immediate explanation for these widespread violations. Tuk pressed the device closer to his mouth, his pale green skin growing darker with stress. "Sir, I cannot provide tactical analysis. The humans appear to be operating without unified command. Structure, impossible." Sherlock snapped back. "No species can coordinate mass defiance without central authority. Our intelligence networks would have detected communication between their leaders." But that was exactly what confused Tuk. In his 3 decades of service, he had studied dozens of rebellions across the galaxy. The Zenfri uprising of 2387 had clear military hierarchy. The Kree resistance movement followed traditional cell structures. Even the robot revolution on Mechanicus Prime had central processing units giving orders. This was different. These humans had simply decided to act together, as if they shared one mind, but thought with thousands of hearts. K walked through the station's main corridor, his heavy boots echoing against the metal floor. At every turn, he encountered another human selling cookies. They didn't run when they saw his uniform. They didn't show fear or anger. They simply continued their illegal commerce with calm determination. He stopped at Engineer Park's station near the reactor core. The human man stood behind a small table, offering cookies to passing aliens with a genuine smile. The dangerous radiation from the power systems didn't seem to bother him at all. "You are in violation of Hegemony Trade Code Section 42, Tick announced, his mechanical voice translator making his words sound harsh and cold. Park looked up at the tall alien officer without flinching. "Yes, sir. I know. Then why do you continue this illegal activity?" Park's weathered hands continued arranging cookies as he spoke. "Because a 12-year-old boy is sitting in your detention center for trying to help his family." "That's not right, Tarks." Scanner beeped as he recorded the statement. "The juvenile violated established regulations. Law enforcement was appropriate." "Maybe by your laws," Park replied, offering a cookie to a passing Zen3 trader. "But not by human laws. Not by the laws of basic decency." The concept made no sense to Turk in hegemony society. Laws existed to maintain order. Personal feelings had no place in legal enforcement. A rule was a rule, regardless of circumstances or emotions. He moved to the medical bay, where Nurse Han had set up her stand outside the main entrance. Injured hegemony soldiers watched from their hospital beds as she served cookies to anyone who approached. Her medical uniform was perfectly clean, her movements precise and professional. "Explain your motivation for this violation," Turk demanded, his scanner ready to record a response. Han paused in her work, looking directly into his four eyes. "That little boy reminds me of my nephew back on Earth. He's the same age, the same curious spirit. If someone arrested my nephew for selling cookies, I'd want the whole galaxy to stand up for him. The juvenile is not related to you," Tick pointed out. "Your genetic connection provides no logical basis for this behavior." "He doesn't have to be related to me," Han said simply. "He's a child. That's enough." Tark's confusion deepened. His own species, the Vorthik, operated on strict family hierarchies. You protected your blood relatives, your clan members, your designated allies. But these humans seemed to extend family-level protection to complete strangers based on nothing more than shared species membership. His investigation continued for hours. At Ambassador Cho's cookie stand outside the council chambers, he encountered the most puzzling response yet. "You risk your diplomatic career for one unknown child," Took observed, his scanner documenting every word. "This action serves no strategic purpose for your mission." Cho smiled as he handed a cookie to a surprised Hegemony Council member. "You're right. It serves no strategic purpose at all. But strategy isn't everything, officer. Sometimes you do things simply because they're right." "Define right in measurable terms," Took requested. "I can't," Cho admitted. "It's not something you measure. It's something you feel. Something you know in your heart when you see injustice happening to someone who can't fight back." That evening, Took sat in his quarters aboard the Hegemony battle cruiser, reviewing hours of recorded interviews. Every human he'd questioned gave similar responses. They spoke of concepts like moral duty and standing up for the innocent and doing what's right. These weren't tactical decisions based on logical analysis. They were emotional responses that somehow created coordinated action. His communication device buzzed with another message from Command Central. "Rest patterns indicate organized resistance. Identify human leadership hierarchy immediately." Took stared at the message. then at his detailed reports. How could he explain that there was no hierarchy, no secret orders or hidden communications? These humans had simply seen injustice and decided to act, individually but in unison. Like birds flying south for winter or flowers turning toward the sun, for the first time in his career. Officer Took encountered something that his training couldn't categorize: a species that valued compassion over order, justice over law, and love over logic. It was alien to everything he understood about civilized behavior, and it terrified him. Officer Took spent 3 sleepless nights in his quarters, surrounded by holographic displays showing data he couldn't understand. The walls of his small room glowed with charts, graphs, and behavioral analysis reports. Every piece of information pointed to the same impossible conclusion: humans had somehow weaponized their emotions. His full eyes burned from staring at the screens, but he couldn't stop. The answer had to be here somewhere. In all his years studying different species across the galaxy, he had never encountered anything like this. The Vorthok conquered through superior technology. The Zenthri used their natural telepathic abilities. The Kree relied on their 3-armed advantage in combat. But humans, they seemed to win by making everyone else want to help them. Computer, display human social interaction patterns from the past 72 hours, Took commanded. The room filled with 3-dimensional models showing how the cookie-selling movement had spread. Nests of connection appeared between thousands of individuals, creating a web of relationships that defied all military logic. There was no central command structure, no communication hub, no leadership hierarchy. Yet somehow, these humans had achieved perfect coordination. Analysis shows pack-bonding behavior extending beyond genetic relationships, the computer announced in its monotone voice. Humans appear to adopt non-relatives into family protection units based on shared model. Concepts Took leaned forward, his pale green skin reflecting the blue light of the holographs. Explain pack bonding. Human subjects demonstrate willingness to sacrifice personal safety for individuals with no genetic connection. Bond formation occurs through shared experiences, common values, or perceived vulnerability in the target subject. The revelation hit Took like a plasma blast to the chest. These humans didn't just protect their own children. They protected all children. They didn't just care about their own families. They created families out of strangers. It was the most dangerous weapon he had ever encountered, because it was completely invisible until it activated. His communication device buzzed with an urgent message from the bridge. Officer Took, report to Command Central immediately. Fleet. Admiral Vex Susan has arrived with reinforcements. Took hurried through the corridors of the massive battle cruiser Iron Claw. The ship's hull groaned under the stress of maintaining position near Station Alpha 7, through the reinforced windows. He could see the hegemony's most powerful warships taking positions round the trading hub. The dreadnought Galaxy Crusher bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. The carrier Stormbringer launched squadrons of fighter craft that swarmed round the station like angry insects. Fleet Admiral Vex Susan stood in the command center, his massive frame towering over the holographic tactical display. As the highest ranking Vorthok in this sector, he commanded absolute authority over hundreds of warships. His scarred face told the story of dozens of successful military campaigns across the galaxy. Officer Took. The Admiral's voice boomed through the bridge. Your reports make no sense. How can primitive humans coordinate resistance without proper command structure? Sir, they possess an ability we have not previously encountered, Took replied carefully. They form emotional bonds with strangers, creating unexpected alliances. Emotion has no place in warfare. Vex Susan snapped. Prepare rest protocols for all human inhabitants. We will end this disruption through superior force. But as the Admiral spoke, Something extraordinary was happening on Station Alpha 7. The security cameras showed images that made Tark's blood run cold. The humans' strange pack bonding ability had begun spreading to other species. Near Engineer Tark's cookie stand by the reactor core. A group of blue-skinned Zenthri had set up their own table. These proud telepathic beings, who normally considered themselves superior to all other species, were selling traditional Zenthri crystal cakes alongside Park's homemade cookies. Their telepathic leader, Zixandra, stood shoulder to shoulder with the human engineer, both of them smiling at passing customers. "This is unprecedented," whispered Commander Zhelik, staring at the display screens. "The Zenthri have never cooperated with any other species in their 3,000-year history." But that wasn't the most shocking development in the station's commercial district. A clan of cream merchants had abandoned their usual profit-focused behavior. These three-armed traders, who normally charged premium prices for everything, were giving away free pastries to anyone who approached their makeshift stands. Their clan leader, Tokmar, had painted a sign in broken English: "Cookies for justice, no payment required." Even more disturbing were the reports coming from the hegemony civilian areas. Several dozen Vorthik families living on the station had quietly joined the cookie sellers. They stood behind small tables in their residential sectors, offering traditional Vorthik nutrient bars to their neighbors. These were loyal hegemony citizens, people who had lived under Vorthik law their entire lives. Yet they had somehow been infected by human values. "How is this possible?" Admiral Vex Susan demanded, his fists clenching in rage. "Our own people are violating regulations." Tech studied the security feeds with growing understanding. "Sir, the humans have somehow transmitted their pack bonding behavior to other species. They are creating artificial family bonds across genetic lines." Ridiculous. No species can alter the fundamental nature of another. But the evidence was undeniable. The station's air reported that cookie sales had spread to every single level, every corridor, every department. Humans had taught other species their most dangerous secret: that strangers could become family if you simply decided to care about them. The Zenthri had felt the humans' determination and decided to add their own telepathic strength too. The cause, the Kree had seen human generosity and chosen to share their wealth freely. Even the Vorthik civilians had witnessed human courage and found their own voices to speak against injustice. Station Alpha 7 had become something that had never existed before in galactic history, a place where different species acted like one enormous family, all united by the simple human belief that protecting children was worth any risk. Admiral Vex Susan stared at the tactical display, watching as his carefully planned military operation crumbled before an enemy he couldn't understand or fight. How do you wage war against an entire station that has learned to love like humans? The moment Fleet Admiral Vex Susan ordered his warships to stand down, something incredible began spreading across the galaxy. News of the Cookie Revolution traveled faster than the fastest starships, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees who had witnessed the impossible unity on Station Alpha 7. On the mining world of Kepler-4 to be, Zenthri workers had endured centuries of harsh conditions under hegemony rule. When they heard how humans had stood together for one rested child, something awakened in their telepathic minds within days. The entire mining operation had shut down as blue-skinned workers set up small food stands throughout the colony, refusing to return to work until their safety conditions improved. The hegemony sent enforcement ships. But the local Vorthik administrators found themselves facing the same impossible situation as Offic. Atuk. How do you rest an entire planet? The miners weren't violent or destructive. They simply stood together, sharing food and stories, creating the same unbreakable bonds they had learned from watching humans. Officer Tuk stood on the bridge of the Iron Claw, watching through the viewports as similar scenes played out across dozens of star systems. His scanner remained silent now. There were too many violations to count. The rigid order that had defined his entire life was crumbling, and strangely, he felt relieved. Officer Took, Admiral Vexusen's voice carried exhaustion instead of its usual commanding tone. "Submit your final report on the human situation," Took looked down at his scanner one last time, then set it aside. "Sir, I resign my commission." The words echoed through the silent bridge. Other officers turned to stare in shock. In 3 centuries of hegemony history, no Vorthik had ever voluntarily left military service. "Explain yourself," the Admiral demanded. "I have observed something that cannot be defeated through force," Turk replied. His mechanical voice translator, struggling with emotions it wasn't designed to handle. "The humans have shown me that strength comes not from control, but from caring. I wish to learn more about this concept they call compassion." 3 months later, Turk found himself in the most unlikely place imaginable, sitting in a small classroom on Earth, surrounded by human children learning about galactic cultures. He had traveled across space to humanity's home world, driven by a need to understand what he had witnessed. The teacher, a kind woman named Miss Kang, had welcomed him despite his intimidating appearance. The children showed no fear of his fur eyes or pale green skin. They asked endless questions about his home planet, his family, his favorite foods. For the first time in his life, Turk experienced what humans call belonging. Mr. Turk asked, a small boy with curious eyes, "Why did your people arrest Jin for selling cookies?" Turk considered the question carefully. "Because we believed that rules were more important than people. We forgot that law should protect the innocent, not punish them for trying to help their families." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the hegemony's rigid structure continued to crack. On the industrial world of Titan Prime, Kree manufacturers had learned human concepts of fair wages and worker rights. They began sharing profits with their employees instead of sending everything to hegemony techs. Collectors, robot factories on Mechanicus Prime programmed themselves to produce toys and art instead of weapons, inspired by stories of human creativity. The breaking point came when several hegemony council members themselves began speaking out against the old system. Councillor Yekstein, a respected Vorthik politician, shocked the Galactic Senate by proposing the Universal Dignity Accords, a new set of laws based on human principles of protecting the vulnerable and supporting families. For 300 years, we have ruled through fear, Yekstein announced to the assembled representatives of dozens of species. We have created order through oppression, but the humans have shown us a different way. They have proven that true stability comes from justice, not force. The vote wasn't even close. Species after species rose to support the new accords. The Zenthri delegation used their telepathic abilities to share feelings of hope and unity throughout the chamber. The Kree representatives donated massive funds to establish schools and hospitals on formerly oppressed worlds. Even many Vorthik officials voted to limit their own power in favor of protecting individual rights. 5 years after Jin's arrest, Station Alpha 7 had become the most important location in the galaxy. The small corner where his cookie stand once operated was now preserved under a beautiful crystal dome. Beings from hundreds of worlds made pilgrimages to see the spot where a 12-year-old boy's courage had changed everything. The bronze plaque mounted beside the memorial reflected the light from passing starships. Here, humanity taught the galaxy that true strength comes from protecting the innocent. When one child faced injustice, an entire species stood as family. Their courage became contagious, spreading hope to every corner of space. Jin, now 17 and studying interstellar diplomacy, often visited the monument with his younger sister. She would listen with wide eyes as he told her about the day their father received a message that thousands of humans were selling cookies in solidarity with their family. "But Jin," she would ask, "weren't you scared when the officer arrested you?" Jin would smile, looking up at the stars visible through the station's transparent dome. "Yes, I was scared, but I wasn't alone. I had something no law could take away. I had people who cared about me, even if they didn't know my name." The former hegemony territories had transformed into something unprecedented, a galactic community, built on human values of compassion, cooperation, and protection for the vulnerable. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together on massive projects to heal war-damaged worlds and create better lives for their children. Turk, who now served as director of interspecies understanding at the New Galactic Academy, often told his students about the day he learned that true power came not from weapons or fear, but from the simple human belief that everyone deserves dignity and protection. The galaxy had discovered that the most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't a plasma cannon or antimatter bomb. It was the human heart, with its infinite capacity to adopt strangers as family and stand against injustice, no matter the cost. The end.